All right, so you have started understanding what kinds of sources you can use for your project. You've gotten a little information about the Walker Library and how to search for sources, all of that good stuff. So now you're at the point where you need to be thinking about evaluating sources, and we can do this through what we call lateral reading, which can help you not only in your research projects, but it can also help you in your personal life as you are sifting through all of the information that is out there. So, in getting started, let's at least acknowledge that the world that we live in is really tough as far as navigating all the information that's out there. It's really, really difficult to know and understand who to trust and how to find legitimate texts that have accurate information. We've all seen that tweet or that social media post or things out there that maybe look really credible and we're just not sure. So it can be really difficult to do. So first of all, give yourself a little credit that it is really hard to get good at this. And in fact, most people are not. So I also want you to think about, is reading sources of information for school different from how you might approach it in your own personal life for general knowledge? And so I would like for you, I feel like you guys have the idea that, when you're doing academic research, you do want to use like library sources and things like that. But maybe you don't merge those two concepts. And I'd like to encourage you to do that maybe a little bit more, because it's really important that the information that you're using in your personal life is also really informed and valid as well. And I do think it matters, but I'd like for you to think about that and explore that some more. So now I want you to think about two different aspects of this idea of using sources. So of course, the first thing is, are they reliable? So you obviously want to work with reliable sources. The second component of this though is the source that you have actually useful? And then if you figure that out, how do we use them? So there's a lot going on when you do this. You need to have some strategies to make sure that you're working with your sources in a way that works for you. The first suggestion I have for you is to have a writing plan, a really clear writing plan. You know what you're after. Maybe you have a really clear research question or thesis or hypothesis. You've thought about the direction you want to take your paper in. You're aware that maybe as you write, things could change, but you have some really clear ideas about what information that you need in order to get to the bottom of the issue at hand or the problem that you are writing about. You also want to make sure you're able to navigate your searches through keywords. So utilizing the words that you wrote down in your proposal, utilizing the keywords that they give you when you search for an article at the library, all those different little keywords pop up, and thinking mostly too about the combinations of those keywords so that you get the best results. I'm going to explain to you in a minute how to do lateral reading. So this is a way to vet your sources. It's going to help you narrow your sources so that you do have time to actually read them, which is one of the biggest problems with college students and research. So read, that is my other tip. You really need to be knowledgeable about this. Imagine, whatever subject you're working in, that you're able to give a speech about it off the top of your head and rattle off some of the main scholars or some of the main people who have studied this issue. So if you don't know your topic well enough to really have a deep conversation about it, then you're not reading enough. So that's one thing I want to make sure of, is you save yourself some time to read. And in order to do that, of course, you've got to have your sources narrowed down. Also, give yourself time to understand the sources. There's a lot going on here. You have to give yourself space to think about your issue that you're writing about. So read and give yourself time to process that information. The other component of this, as you're kind of walking yourself through the beginning stages of the research project, is to make sure to have a overall research question as well as the research questions that you need in order to solve or work through your problem. Make sure you're asking questions that require synthesis versus just basic regurgitation. So you want to make sure that you have some ideas that have to work and marry together in order to make sense of everything, and that will help you make the most use of your research. So what has emerged from all this? The concept is lateral reading. And to help walk you through this, I'm going to visit right now the UWC's Evaluating Sources handout. which I think will do a good job in explaining what this means. All right, so to read laterally, so when you're working with sources, especially digital sources that are out there, it's important to remember that you've got to assess all of these. So what lateral reading is instead of reading up and down on the page, so in other words, starting at the top, reading the whole source from top to bottom, just like this, and not really doing much else. Or some people flip their eyes all around the page and just kind of glance at things and look at visuals. What we're asking you to do here is to leave the page of the source that you're on in order to dig deeper into what makes the source credible and relevant. So with lateral reading, before you actually do any reading at all, you're going to be digging deeper into the source. So here's some really excellent suggestions. So instead of just trusting a source, because there is an about the author section. And that's the thing too about non-credible sources now, is sometimes they look really legit. So it can be really difficult. Okay, so instead of just saying, oh, there's an author, start digging. Who is the author? Is the description of the author on the site helpful? Do you need to kind of branch out from there? How is the author related to your topic? Is the author an expert in some kind of way? You can open a new tab and check that out. Or instead of trusting that an organization or sponsor sounds legitimate, start looking into who they are, who's sponsoring the information. Is there any slant or bias? How do you know? Who are they funded by? Open a new tab and start researching to figure that out. Instead of trusting a source just because it has references, start looking at what kind of work is referenced. Is it current? Is it current in the field? Is it cited work that's trusted by experts? How do you know? So open a new tab and figure that out. Another idea that I hear from students sometimes is that they can trust a source that ends in .blank, but they can't trust a source that ends in, let's say, .com. That's old school news, unfortunately. It's not that simple. So instead of just trusting it based on the domain attribution, ask yourself, what do I know about the sponsor of the information? Again, is there a parent group or company tied to the website? Is the information presented in the piece supported by reliable evidence? Who financed the research? How do you know? So you can't just trust those basic things there. So we want to take a look at, a good way to think of this is what's going on behind the scenes of this source. Now there's other evaluation systems that you may have heard of. The MTSU library provides several different methods for this. And you can look at these under research guides under that English 1020 section. But the idea is all the same here. You really have to stop and think about what's going on behind the scenes. So let's return here for just a second. So let's just say I have the research question of what are the similarities and differences between the American system of elementary education and the Finnish or Finland system of education, and how can this information lead to the advancement of the US system? So let's say that's what I'm exploring. I'm looking at, I'm going to be a teacher. Maybe that's my major is education. So this is what I would like to research this semester and dig in and find the answer to. So I'm going to share some sources with you on the second part of this video. And I want you to think about if you would consider using these sources and why or why not, and maybe even to what extent would you use this source. So as we end this video, take a look at those sources and then come back to the second video so we can go through them together.